Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. I'm here in downtown Baltimore at Jazz Club Keystone Corner, and I'm sitting here with royalty, a jazz legend. This young lady has been on the scene for over 50 years and has worked with many greats from Joe Henderson to Stanley Clarke, Wayne Shorter, Carlos Santana, Lenny White, and Stevie Wonder, to name a few. She is a pianist, composer, educator, and record producer. Please welcome to Jazz Talk, Miss Patrice Rushen. Patrice, how are you?
Hey, Preston, so great to see you. Hey, out there.
I just caught your set, which was fantastic. You were on fire. The band was smoking. I wanted to ask you about these particular musicians that you brought down with you, Marvin "Smitty" Smith, Reggie Hamilton, Ernie Watts, and Tim Green. What do they bring to this music that you've been here for the last 4 days, but what do these group of musicians bring to this music that you presented to us?
This particular group of musicians, I think what we have in common and what we share is not only a love of the tradition, but the idea of also the other kinds of musics that have come from the tradition. All of the contemporary music, as far as I'm concerned, has some basis, and if you trace it all the way back, it's going to be something about it that speaks to black music.
Yes.
And so when you have a bass player like a Reggie Hamilton, who has played with everybody from Chris Bodie to Babyface, you've got Marvin "Smitty" Smith, who's done everything from Sonny Rollins to The Tonight Show, and Ernie Watts, who was a studio veteran for 20, 30 years, playing also on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, but who has graced so many different kinds of albums and solos that people know and even sing and don't realize that it's him on many, 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 many great popular music records. Myself, who comes from that background as well, as far as the jazz tradition being the roots of the understanding of the music, and then that enhance the vocabulary for all the other kinds of music that I do. And I can say the same for Tim Green, who has also joined us. So I think what we bring to it is being able to see the music through a lens that allows for us to understand the gravity of the shoulders on which we stand, but also to be able to bring to it a certain understanding about other kinds of music, other kinds of styles. But when you boil them all down, you do come up with the understanding that they are linked, and we are part of that lineage.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Now, you have some history, Patrice, with Keystone Corner going back decades, I guess the 70s. And I guess maybe when you were 19 or 20 years old, you played a gig at Keystone Corner. You opened for Betty Carter. Can you remember that gig? I mean, what was that like? Tell me about that.
I remember that gig so well because it was really the first time that I had been, in a place other than Los Angeles, which is my home. The Keystone was in San Francisco. So to have an opportunity to play there and be a performer there when I had been, somebody who would come in to listen to people for so long whenever I was in that area was really a gas. At that time, the stint was a Tuesday through Sunday stint. So I was opening for Betty Carter and got to hear her every single night. And the discipline, the idea of the music, the spiritual aspect, and the idea of presentation of the music being the first priority, and it just being her being in such command, gave me a lot of information that to this day I rely on, in terms of really wanting to not only know your stuff, but also be able to impart that information and impart a certain kind of power to the other players to be able to offer their best. I got that. I got a taste of that watching her during that week. And then her pianist at the time was the great John Hicks. And just to be able to watch him and his stamina was incredible for me. So it was a wonderful experience all the way around, and that it was at the Keystone is kind of important, and this is sort of another milestone for me to be at the Keystone now.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I was looking at the schedule. You've been here since Thursday, and basically just about every one of your shows have sold out. And I've been coming here since Todd opened in May 2019, and that's never happened before. So that says a lot about you. Now, I was going to ask you just projects and things that you've worked on. Last year, you worked with your friend, pianist Billy Childs. You guys did a great piano duet, which I loved, and I've had Billy on the show a couple of times as well too. But are there any projects that you're working on? Any new music that we may see from Patrice Rushen that's coming out anytime soon?
I think so. I mean, I was saying on the bandstand tonight, how great it is to kind of now be kind of back in the flow. My career has taken on many different areas. There's been music direction for television. There's been obviously, playing and teaching. And each one of those things is a career in and of itself, it seems. But the idea of finding that balance and finding a way to pull those things together still pulls me back into the idea of presentation, and presentation in terms of performance. So what I'm finding out is that there are places where those, covering those things in an artistic way, there are places where those meet. I teach when I'm on stage. I play when I teach. All of the kinds of things that I've learned seemingly are coming together in such a way that I can now figure out what I would like to do at this stage of my life. And being able to write and have a lot of music, and a lot of music of different styles and things like that, I mean, it just says that there's still a lot of work to do. I'm going to have a lot of fun doing it. But I think I have a handle now on the idea of just do it. Just do it. We don't have to worry about categories as much anymore. We don't have to be concerned about certain kinds of situations that were part of my generation's marketing strategies for records and things like that. People are finding the music. They're talking about music, and if it's presented and you have a certain following, as I do, I think that as long as you're doing things and it's coming from the truth and your truth, it resonates with them.
Amen to that. And especially, I think you mentioned during your performance tonight when you were on stage, COVID, how in a very strange way, COVID has been a blessing to a lot of people because they've had time to work on other projects. They're writing, composing, and you've been doing quite a bit of writing yourself during this time. What would you say if you look back, especially on 2020 or just during the pandemic, what would you say you've learned through all of that, and how has it shaped or maybe helped your music?
Well, great question. I think one of the things that I've learned is that you can't take things for granted. And I wouldn't have thought that I would be a person that would have taken a lot for granted, and I don't think I did. But, it becomes the really, really simple things. There was a moment during the pandemic that I couldn't write. There was a moment where I just was not motivated, and like I said, music, that typically is my sanctuary. That's where I go, when I'm not feeling good. That is what's going to help to shake me out of it. That's going to give me grounding. That's going to help me out. It wasn't there, and I couldn't do it. It was very scary. But what I did have was community. I had my peer group, some of the players that you have mentioned, and I could talk to them, and we could play music that we had done in the past for one another and remind each other of our responsibility as artists to continue to find ways to be able to present what we had, whatever it was that we had to say, including the fact that if we didn't feel good, to be able to say that. And to be able to say that to each other allowed me to come out of it. So now I'm feeling really good about the fact that even though, we still have work to do and things are not totally back, that there's an environment that I think will support the idea of giving, the idea of doing something that is connected to our art in a way that I think we hadn't thought about before.
Beautiful, beautiful. One last question. Has anyone ever approached you or come to you maybe with an idea of doing a documentary on Patrice Rushen or autobiography?
Oh, I love it. If anybody is out there that would like to do it, you have my permission to just give me a shout. Let me know. I'm at a point in my life now where when I look back, and especially through interviews and talking to you over the years and things like that, you look back and you say, wow, there were a lot of things that happened. When you're in the process of doing it, you're just doing it. Right. You're thinking, at least for me, I'm thinking in terms of what I am doing in the moment and wanting to do great work and then move on to the next thing. But when you look back, if you've done a few things, you've got a few things that maybe people want to talk about. And the road for me has had some interesting adventures that I would love to share. Some of them may save some people some time, and some of it might be inspirational. You never know. So sure, I've thought about it, and I hope that someday that will happen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Patrice, I want to thank you so much for being on Jazz Talk today. It is always a pleasure just to share some time and space with you, and you're a class act. Love you. Well, you've heard it from the great Patrice Rushen, and as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.